How are the Seattle Seahawks going to do for the upcoming 2024 NFL season? I'm going to go through their schedule and tell you what I believe will happen. Well, the NFL season is almost upon us, and so what I wanted to do was go through the schedule that the Seattle Seahawks are going to be playing this upcoming season. And it's going to be an interesting season because there is some coaching changes that have happened. Pete Carroll is no longer the head coach. They are now head coached by Mike Macdonald. And in this year's NFL draft, they focused primarily on the defensive end of players that they picked up. So what I wanted to do was go through each game, see how they will do, whether they will win, whether they will lose, and give my final season prediction as to how they will do. Now, before I get into this, I just wanted to say that as a Seahawks fan, I'm really hoping they have a good season. But at the same time, I'm also realistic in knowing that this team is on a rebuild. And with that in mind, I just wanted to see if they can surprise people. Now, some experts say that Seattle could surprise some people, but I just don't see it happening. So let me get into the schedule and let me see if they will win or if they will lose. And that's basically all I'm going to do. I'm not going to break down the rosters from each team. That's just not me. I'm just going to look at the teams that they're playing, whether they're at home or on the road, and I'm going to just say, will they win? Will they lose? That's basically it. So this is not going to be a very long video. So they start off week 1 against the Denver Broncos at Lumen Field in Seattle, and Seattle pulls out the victory, so they get their home opener. Their first game on the road is at New England, but I think Seattle is good enough to win, and they will. They'll beat New England. Then they come back home to take on the Miami Dolphins, and this appears to be sort of a trap game because Miami has a good offense, and that might be a test for the young Seattle defense. And I think Miami will pull it out, and Seattle will lose their first game of the season against the Miami Dolphins. Then they go to Detroit for a Monday night game against the Lions, and I think Seattle is going to lose again. Now, they have beaten Detroit the last couple years in Detroit, but I think Detroit is on a mission this year to try to get back into contention for the Super Bowl because they were so close last year, and they might be using that as motivation. So Detroit pulls it off. Then they come home to take on the New York Giants, and Seattle is victorious there. So Seattle wins there. Then they take on the San Francisco 49ers. Now this could be a very close game. I hate to admit it. San Francisco does pull it off in Seattle. Seattle loses to San Francisco. Then they go to Atlanta to take on the Falcons. And this one here could go either way. But I think that Atlanta has brought in some key players, including quarterback Kirk Cousins, and Atlanta gets the victory. Then they come home to take on the Buffalo Bills. And even though Buffalo is a legitimate threat in the past few years, they have lost some key players. Despite the fact that they still have Josh Allen, he still is a factor. But I think Seattle actually does pull this one out. They beat Buffalo in Seattle. Then they take on the Los Angeles Rams. And that might be a letdown for Seattle, if I'm being honest, because Los Angeles has really had Seattle's number these past few years. In fact, Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson, when they were playing the Rams, had a losing record against the Rams. And I think Los Angeles will still have Seattle's number, and they beat Seattle. Then they have their bye in Week 10. But it's not a good bye, because when they resume their regular season, they have to travel to San Francisco to take on the 49ers. Now, they might be well rested. They might have good energy for the game. But San Francisco will still pull out the win. Then they come home to take on the Arizona Cardinals, and Seattle will beat Arizona. Then they travel to New York to take on the Jets, and this is going to be an interesting season for the New York Jets. A lot of their success is going to depend on the health of Aaron Rodgers. It could go either way, but if Aaron Rodgers is playing, in which I'm going to assume that he is going to play, New York is going to beat Seattle. Then they go to Arizona to take on the Cardinals, and Arizona gets payback and they beat Seattle. And it doesn't get any easier for Seattle because they have to play the Green Bay Packers. But they are playing in Seattle, so this is going to be an interesting matchup. Green Bay is an up-and-coming team, but I think that Seattle will pull it off. They will beat Green Bay. Then they play the Minnesota Vikings, and Minnesota is having a down year this year, mainly because of their uncertainty at quarterback, and Seattle beats Minnesota. And that is how their home season will end. Their final 2 games are on the road. They are at Chicago to take on the Bears, and a lot of people are saying that the Bears could be surprising some people, that they might even have a winning record. As to whether or not they'll make the playoffs, that remains to be seen. It is late in the year, and I think Chicago pulls it off and beats Seattle. And then they finish their regular season in Los Angeles, taking on their rivals, Rams. And again, Los Angeles really has Seattle's number. And Seattle loses their final regular season game to Los Angeles. And so that's how I think this season is going to turn out for the Seattle Seahawks. They are only going to get 7 wins, 10 losses. Now, they could surprise me and have a better season than I had predicted. I really hope so. I would like to see them have a winning season. I just don't think that they are capable of winning 10 games. At the very most is 9. That's just what I believe. There's a new coaching staff, a new group of young players. So the chemistry is going to take some time to get used to. Now, like I said earlier, I hope that they prove me wrong. When the season is over, I'm going to look back on it to see if my predictions were correct or not. Now, I'm not going to say that this game was right or this game is wrong. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just look at their final record. And if their record matches with my prediction, okay, well, that's fine by me. If they get a worse record than me, well, maybe I overshot. But if they do better than I thought, hey, I don't mind losing like that. As a Seahawks fan, I just want to try to be. I'm rooting for them. I want them to be successful, but I'm also being realistic. So let me know down in the comments, how do you think the Seahawks will do this year if you're a Seahawks fan? And what NFL team are you a fan of? Who are you rooting for this year? Please let me know down in the comments, and thank you for watching.